Howdy. Qorvex got a new augment for the Techrot Encore, and it's quite snazzy, so I figured I might as well finally do that Qorvex build I've been meaning to do for months now. Unfortunately, the game was not on my side, and things kept happening, and then they changed it, and you couldn't cast abilities during it anymore, yada yada, stuff happened, I decided to change the build. Next thing you know, I've been working on this same goddamn build for like 11 days. Anyways, we got it done now, finally. Alright, now that we've arrived here, we can briefly go over how Qorvex works, because I know some of you might not have a good enough grasp on all of his abilities, because he's a pretty underrated frame and as such does not get played very often because a lot of people don't care for him, with the exception of course of the few hardcore Qorvex mains out there. So let's go over his abilities real quick. First of all, his passive, it gives +3 punch through to all of your weapons. This is both good and bad, it sort of depends. Some weapons do not want punch through. A good example would be the Mutilus Cernos. With the Mutilus Cernos, the gas cloud it makes is wherever the arrow ends up. So if you shoot an enemy and the arrow hits them, hits their head, stuck in their head, makes the gas cloud upon impact because the arrow has no punch through. If you have punch through, like from his passive, it's going to go through all the enemies, hit the wall, and that gas cloud is then on that wall, doing absolutely nothing. So be mindful of that. It doesn't matter for most weapons, right? Most of the time it's going to be nice to have, but it can mess up a few weapons here and there. So try to test it out maybe a little bit. His first ability is Chirinka Pillar. Summon a Chirinka Pillar that slows enemies. It pulses radiation damage with a guaranteed status effect. It pulses about once per second. It has a guaranteed 1 radiation proc on all the enemies it hits. Base damage of 1000. Has a base duration of 35 seconds, which is very, very solid. Only costs 25 energy. You can have a max of 2 pillars out at a time. It has an 8-meter radius, and it slows enemies by 35%. The slow is unaffected by any other modifiers, right? Like strength and stuff don't affect it. It will always be a 35% slow. The empowered duration is something we will go over in a bit, but you cannot empower the pillars unless you're on Qorvex himself, because this is also his helmet ability. It's a pretty nice ability. I do like putting it on other frames, not just having it on him. It's good crowd control with the radiation, assuming there aren't like 10 million Xmas enemies exclusively in the mission. And it also applies radiation for extra status procs if you're using gun CO or normal CO, etc, etc. Now, yeah, we'll get to the casting speed thing in a second. Next, we have Containment Wall. Contain the threat. Qorvex summons walls that slam together, damaging all enemies caught between them and inflicting radiation status. This, again, has guaranteed radiation procs. It has 3,500 impact damage, which is something. It has a damage vulnerability, so if you hit enemies with this, they're gonna take more damage. That's nice on paper, but it doesn't really work well in practice because the ability is not very good, to be totally honest. The only thing range does is increase how far it goes forward. It does not increase the width. And though it grabbing enemies and pulling them in to the center is very, very janky. It lines them up. The purpose of this is you line them up and then you have all the punch through for your weapons. That's why he's got that +3 punch through, but in practice it is very, very janky. So this will probably be the ability you end up subsuming off of him. This does have an augment as well though, and it makes it so if you hit enough enemies it will reset the duration on the pillars, and it will also empower them, which again we'll go over the empowered and pillars in just a second. And it also gives armor strip when you hit enemies with the wall. But even with that augment, I still do not think this is a good ability. Even if that augment was part of the base ability, I would not think it was good enough to keep in most scenarios. Next, we have Disometric Guard. Guard yourself and nearby allies against status effects. Each time Qorvex kills or assists in killing an enemy affected by radiation status, the number of status effects Disometric Guard can prevent increases. So this gives you a number, its base 5 stacks, and it can cap out at 10 that is affected by your stats. I believe it's duration. Is it duration or strength? I can't remember. I think it's duration. Could be wrong about that though. Well, I don't know why I can't remember in the moment right now. Costs 75 energy. It does give it to teammates as well, so it is very good for making your teammates not die of status effects. Very, very nice. And every time you kill an enemy that has radiation on it, it's 10% chance to gain a stack for every stack. So if they have 10 stacks of radiation, that's a guaranteed 1 stack towards Disometric Guard. So long as you're killing enemies with radiation on them, you will never have to recast this. Very nice ability. And it's got a little bit long of a duration, and it roots you in place, but that's not that big of a deal because, again, you're only really going to cast it once more than likely. Finally, we have his bread and butter, Crucible Blast. Drains 100 energy, so, you know, bit expensive. Release a beam from Qorvex's Crucible core. Each enemy struck suffers radiation damage with a guaranteed status effect. Enemies affected by radiation status explode in a chain reaction. The range is 40 meters. The explosion damage is 500 at base with an extra 250 per stack of radiation. So if they're at max stacks, that is going to be 3,000 damage per explosion. And the explosion radius is 8 meters. Very, very solid. You are also immune to damage while it's being cast. You have iframes, so that's very nice. And this is something that really scales well the more enemies it have. So if I hit one enemy, the explosions are going to happen on that one enemy. It's not going to scale very well because it's only doing damage to one guy. Okay? Like right here. See? It's not doing a whole lot. But when there's groups of enemies, because every enemy can then explode, it has quadratic scaling. So we shoot all of these guys, and all of a sudden, the chain reaction explosions are just constantly happening. I believe I have no maybe I do have mods on this build. Actually, I think I do. But you can see that was like, we didn't do anything but like quickly swipe against them, and it did pretty solid damage. Very, very good ability. And this is the ability that you will be using most of the time because he is a caster frame. You mostly just spam this to kill people. And it's also the ability that got the new augment. Now, before we go over the augments, we have to quickly cover something very important, which would be casting speed. So let's go ahead and switch to Manrai so I can show it off what it actually does. Casting speed, it is like sort of nice on your 4, I guess, and your 3, but the main things that it is a problem with is your 2 and your 1. Your second ability, casting speed, only affects the animation of your hands. That's it. Okay, the walls, see how I finished the animation early and then the walls then close in? That it's doing nothing. You're not grouping enemies any faster than you are without casting speed. On top of that, even though the animation finishes early, you are still stuck in place. You can't do anything. Look, if I move as soon as I can without casting speed, as soon as the walls shatter, I can move forward. If I have casting speed, I still can't move forward until after the walls shatter, even though I'm technically done with the animation. So casting speed does nothing for his 2. It also only affects part of his 1. See how it's like you're stuck in the air, right? And then you slam it. The only thing that is affected is when you go to slam it by casting speed. The recoil effect, I guess you could say, of when you slam it and have to get back up, that is not affected by casting speed. So it's only applying to parts of the ability, making it significantly less effective. That is why I don't believe casting speed is valuable on Qorvex at all. I would not bother with it. I mean, I guess it's okay for his 4, sort of, but it's really unnecessary and a complete waste to mod into it or get it from anywhere else in your build, or at least if you're sacrificing something else by having it. So don't bother with that. Now, his augments, we have to go over what that does. Yeah, we had no mods on that whole time. It did half those enemies' damage in a single cast. Pretty good. So the augments that is new with Tekrot Encore is Fused Crucible Blast. Crucible Blast augment. Crucible Blast becomes a channeled ability and costs 20 energy per second that ramps up. While active, Chirinka Pillar triggers chain reactions, okay, and their duration is frozen. Mobility is greatly reduced. I totally forgot we didn't explain the empowered thing yet. Okay, back up. I'm stupid. Okay, the empowered thing on the pillars. If you have pillars down and you cast your 4 and drag the laser over the pillar, it will empower it. You have to shoot the top of the pillar, okay? See how I shot it and nothing happened? You have to shoot the glowing part. Hit that and it becomes empowered. It will then pulse twice as fast, so it's, you know, more DPS, quotation marks, and it's applying more status effects, and will also make it so the pillars themselves can trigger the chain reactions that your 4th ability can also trigger. So that's very nice, and normally without the augment you have to like try to hit the pillars. It's not the end of the world, but it is a little bit inconvenient. But the augment fixes that. Going back now, back to it. So while you use the 4 with this augment, the pillars no longer go down in duration. They are paused. As long as the 4 is active, the Chiringa pillars do not go down in their duration. And they will also always be empowered while your 4th is active. And because it becomes a channel ability, you can use it forever should you have the energy. So if we put these pillars down now, and we cast our 4 and we don't even shoot them, see, they're empowered. As soon as the 4 ends, they're not empowered anymore. And see, 29 seconds, they're not going down anymore, sitting at 29 for as long as the ability is active. Now, with this ability or augments, we can also now move around, which is very, very nice. The base movements of your character when you're in the ability is still very, very slow, but you can dash around still, so that's nice. I had to redo this because they changed it. You used to be able to cast abilities while you were in your 4 with the augments, but you can't anymore, which means it was a bug. That's highly unfortunate. It was kind of wonky. I'm honestly glad they did the change because it was annoying trying to make a build while making use of that. Well, sorry about that. But it was also a little unbalanced. I don't want to say unbalanced because there's more busted stuff in the games, but regardless, I think it was something that needed to be fixed. Now, with the augments, because we can also move around now and always have the empowered on our pillars, it is much easier to play him, and you can also have much higher uptime on your DPS because you're constantly attacking. You don't have to recast your 4 anymore, just move around while shooting everything. Very, very convenient. He is perfectly viable at base. You do not need this augment. It's just really nice to have. Now, we are done with all of the explanations. Okay, now we can get on to the actual build, alright? What most of you are probably here for. Starting off with the Archon shards. Actually, let's make sure we switch to the actual loadout, Reactor Meltdown. I know, it sounds so deliciously spicy. Now, for the Archon shards, we have 5 orange Tauforge shards. Each gives 15% ability damage on enemies affected by radiation status. We obviously have radiation on the enemies at all times, so we will always get this damage bonus. And it is multiplicative to everything else, so it is a 75% increase in ability damage. Very, very nice to have. I highly recommend putting as many orange shards on him as you can, and as many Tauforged as you can. Now, for the mods and arcanes, we have corrosive projection here, so we can get some armor strip on the enemies. Just corrosive projection itself on enemies that are at max armor is like, I think it's close to double the damage bonus. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, right? It's like nearly double damage or around there. It's been a couple months. So very nice to have, especially because we don't have super consistent armor strip in this build. You'll see pretty soon here. Then mobilize is the X-less slot. This is completely up to preference. You don't have to run this. You could run prime sure-footed if you wanted, but that's kind of pointless because you already have, you know, status immunity, and you also have complete immunity in your 4. The only reason I would run prime sure-footed is if you get rid of his 3 instead of his 2. Okay, that's the only reason I even mentioned it, but I personally got rid of his 2. Before I go over the rest of the mods, I probably should say that, yeah, we got rid of his 2 for Breach Surge, because Breach Surge means even more chain damage everywhere, okay? The chain explosions can trigger Breach Surge. Very spicy. This is kind of insane, and it also is like radiation damage, so, you know, that just makes things even funnier. Mobilize, the reason we have it on is because it's cheap and it gives parkour velocity, which affects how fast and far we dash, meaning we have even more mobility while we're in the channel state in S4 with the augments. For the arcanes, we have Arcane Battery and Molt's Augmented. Molt's Augmented is pretty obvious. We want more strength because that gives us even higher damage. Arcane Battery is here because he has extremely high base armor. The base armor on Qorvex is a whopping 875. He also has a very high base health of 600. Now, while you are immune during your floor, if you ever have to end the ability because you run out of energy or you need to move somewhere new, I don't like getting one shot in between that time. It's very inconvenient. So we are going with a health tanking build. If you were to decide to use this for level cap instead, because this would work for level cap, this entire build, the only thing you would need to change is instead of a health tanking in between your four, you would go for some level of shield gate. I'm not going to go over that right now, but it would be pretty simple to switch a few things out. So Arcane Battery here with his high armor, which we're also building into because of health tanking, gives us a very high energy. We're at 935 max energy, and that is without having primed flow on, so that's nice. We also have adaptation here so that we actually have some level of DR. Otherwise, just DR from armor and high health is not going to cut it to keep us alive. We have stretch and overextended for as much range as we can get, or at least reasonably. We don't need to like get the max possible range. These two mods here are enough because the more range you have, not only the more enemies your pillars will be able to hit, but also the more enemies the chain reactions explosions will be able to hit. Meaning the quadratic scaling is even more effective because you can hit even more enemies in larger groups that are not quite as close as you would like them to be. So right now we have a humongous explosion radius of 18.8 meters, which is really, really nice. A lot of people I've seen on Qorvex say that all you need is range, don't care about strength. I strongly disagree with that. When you start facing chunkier enemies, having no strength or negative strength is really annoying. So I would still try to have strength if you could, but you do want to focus range over strength on a general basis. We have Equilibrium for our energy economy because he does struggle with energy a bit if you are spamming abilities. Fused Crucible, of course, as the augments. Then we have the triple umbral mods: Vitality for HP, Fiber for armor, and Intensify for strength. You do not need the triple umbral mods if you don't have them. Just go normal Intensify with the normal Fiber and Vitality. It will be perfectly fine. It's not necessary to have the umbral mods. I just like it because it's slightly better and it also looks prettier in the mods menu. Now, something you can do is replace one of your arcanes, probably Molt's Augmented here, with one of the new arcanes if you feel like you need the extra energy, okay? And that would be Arcane Universal Fallout. I do not have it, but what it does is each radiation status effect inflicted on enemies by abilities specifically gives a 6% chance to drop a universal orb on enemy death. A universal orb is just a health orb and a energy orb mixed into one. I think the only other source of universal orbs from a frame, at least, is Lavos. Might be some other ones, but Lavos is the only one I can remember off the top of my head. So pretty much every enemy is going to be at max radiation procs when they die, so that's 60% chance for every enemy to drop a universal orb. That's a lot of energy, like a fuck ton of energy. And it should make it for your teammates as well, so you just become an absolute battery of a dude, which is quite nice. But this is extremely expensive and extremely hard to get right now, so I doubt anybody's going to have a rank 5 of this at the moment. But in the future, you can think of this, though you would be sacrificing the extra strength from Molt's Augmented. And that is it for the mods and arcanes as well as archon shards. So let's get on to the rest of the loadout. Now, the primary weapon is up to you. I couldn't really find anything I felt had any level of good synergy with him. He does kill acolytes very, very easily if there's at least a few enemies around for the chain explosions to, you know, eviscerate them. So you don't need a primary capable of killing an acolyte, and most of the time you're going to be using your abilities, so just run something you like into some level of downtime if you feel like you need it. Otherwise, you could literally run no primary if you wanted, but I mean, there's no reason to run no primary over running a primary, so do as you wish with this slot. I'm running the Incarnon Dara Vandal. In case you're interested here, we'll just briefly hover over what I have on it. It's not really relevant, but there you go. Now for the secondary weapon, we have Favonius Codex. You do not need to buff him even more than he is already, but I do like doing it because it's funny and we like big damage numbers. And Favonius Codex is perfect for that. So we'll be using this with Vohm Invocation to get an extra 60% ability strength. We also have Amalgam Barrel Diffusion here to give us dodge speed to make us a little bit faster. Prime Fulmination does affect the alt fire's radius, making it easier to hit more enemies to get Vohm Invocation built up. Lock Canticle in the Exilus shot slot. Just for fire rate, you can go with Boss Canticle instead. I guess it doesn't really matter. Neither of them is doing much. The rest of the setup is just to have a little bit of damage on the weapon, so it can maybe kill an Xmas here or there. And we have secondary Fortify here, just because then it will also help kill Overguard a little bit and give us some Overguard. Though you can run something else, it's really not relevant what you run on it, though, for the Arcane slot. Now, for the melee, again, this is the case with a lot of builds I've been doing lately, I feel like. Or, I mean, I haven't been doing a lot of builds lately, but you get my point, okay? The melee weapon, again, doesn't really matter. Just sort of run what you want, because this is a caster frame, and when you're using a caster frame, you don't really use your weapons. I like Dark Split Sword because it fits his theme. It's a very cool weapon. It's basically just a melee with radiation at base and okay stats. There's nothing really fancy about it other than its unique trait, which would be, it doesn't show up right here, but the Dark Split Sword can be either a great sword or a dual sword. Okay, so you can put a dual sword stance on it and it changes the stats to be crit focused, or you can go with a great sword and it becomes status focused. So see how it's a great sword right now, and then I go into the Exilus mods and I put on this. Now it's a dual sword. I think that's pretty cool. So that cool factor of it, plus the base radiation fitting his radiation theme and the weapon just looking cool in general, I think it fits him. So that's what I run. The build on it is a pretty standard melee build for melee influence and electric. There's nothing really interesting about it because you can't really use much stuff on this melee other than this to get it to actually do useful damage, or at least not in my experience. Then we have the Focus School. This is up to you. I like Vazarin for the extra survivability because we have no health regeneration. You'll see if we go back here, nothing in our build is giving us health regen, even though we have very high health and we're health tanking. So by running Vazarin, we can then use Protective Sling to heal ourselves, as well as Void Regen. Then we can also heal our teammates, res them instantly, yada yada yada, all the fancy stuff. And getting the iframes from Protective Sling can also be very nice to have, just even more survivability. If you need extra energy, Zenric is an option. If you are focusing on your melee, Naramon is an option, except I don't know why you would focus using your melee on Qorvex. That would be stupid. Madrai does work for extra strength, though I do not like having to proc it constantly when I play Qorvex, and the casting speed is a bit wasted on him since it doesn't affect all of his abilities properly, though I would run Madrai specifically if I was doing Void Cascade. Yuneru is completely worthless on him, do not use it. Then we have the Companion. Now another thing other than not having health regen is, other than cross projection, you might have noticed we have no armor strip. And that is very important to give us a lot more damage. We want some level of armor strip. Now, a lot of the time, your teammates will probably have something armor stripping, at least a little bit, so it's not that big of a deal if you're in co-op. But if you are playing by yourself, what we are using for armor strip would be our Companion in some capacity. It's not going to be a full strip, but it's going to be something. So first we have Nautilus Prime, because grouping enemies is very, very nice, especially with the quadratic scaling of our 4 and the explosions. So why not? We are running a fairly standard duplex spawn build on Nautilus Prime, Manifold Bond, Vacuum Guardian to help keep us alive, Cordon to spam that. That's what Manifold Bond is also here for, to help spam that assault mode so it can target stuff with the weapon. Duplex Bond, so there's tons of these guys running around to prime enemies. Accelerate Deflection to help keep it alive, Synth Deconstruct for more health orbs, for more energy from Equilibrium. calculated redirection to give it a bigger shield gate, and prime regen to make it come back faster and give it more iframes. Then for the words help me weapon, then for the companion weapon we have Hellstrom, because I love this thing. It's very nice. It shoots multiple heat-seeking exploding rockets, very high status chance, great for priming. We have a normal viral primer setup here without radiation on it because that leaves heat on it. Viral will be coming from this dude. Everything's going to be at max viral procs all the time, well, most of the time. And the heat is where we are going to be getting armor strip. The heat status effects takes a tick of damage once per second every 5 seconds, and every second it reduces the enemy's armor by 10%. So after 5 ticks of damage, that is half of their armor gone. So over time, the heat will strip enemy armor to some degree, which is going to give us a lot more damage in the long run. Very nice to have. Now the build itself, you just want lots of fire rates and multi-shots and status chance, and of course viral on the weapon. Prime Firestorm for bigger explosions, you know, multi-shot, fire rate, status chance, yada yada yada, you get the point. That is it for the build. For your operator specifically, not, you know, separate from the focus school, you can run whatever you want. It's of little consequence, so do as you please with that. Now, before we go into mission, I am, of course, as always, going to show it against the enemies in the Simulacrum in a controlled situation. And first, I would like to do so without the whole setup. We just want Qorvex himself. No companion for viral or more armor strip. We're not going to buff ourselves with our focus school or whatever, and we're not going to be using the Grimoire to get the extra strength. I just want to show Qorvex himself killing a group of enemies, because he can definitely do it, okay? We're not even going to cast Breach Surge. First, we're just going to use his 4th ability. No Breach Surge and no Pillars. We can go ahead and just end it early. I'd say that's pretty effective. All right, now let's add in a little bit more spice to the mix. We go shabam, shabam, and then we do Breach Surge and our 4. And then I end it just so we can look at things. Very nice indeed. He is a very effective frame. Then for those that are interested at all, we can go ahead and just quickly show him plus the companion for the extra armor strip and stuff. I'm not going to do Breach Surge this time. It's not going to take effect fast enough to even matter. So suck these guys in, replace down our pillars. I have no energy. I'm stupid. Okay. There we go. All right, now we're going to do this. And they're all dead. Magnificent. Let us go into a mission to show off the build in action. We have arrived in the mission. I was thinking of doing one of the 1999 tile sets because that's like, you know, what people are doing right now for the new content. But I just, after several mission attempts, I just could not get enemies to freaking spawn in any decent amount of group sizes. And that's where Qorvex really shines. I suppose maybe it would have happened in co-op, but if I'm in co-op, then teammates are killing the enemies and we can't really properly show off the build. So instead, we're in the good old-fashioned mod survival. And I mean, this just makes the build look even better because these enemies are resistant to radiation. We are doing 50% less damage because they have radiation resistance. So this is far less damage than you'll be doing against enemies that are not resistant to radiation. So like if you're facing enemies without the rad resistance, you'll be doing double the damage that I'm doing here. If you're facing enemies that have rad resistance, you'll be doing triple the damage that I'm doing here. So the fact that we can comfortably and completely destroy these enemies despite that should be a testament to how strong Qorvex is. The explosions everywhere are also extremely satisfying. Now, I have a close to base color energy on this guy right now. So it's mostly orange. I mean, I think it's like red's the base. This is like bright orange, so it's a lot easier to see what's going on for the most part. But if you want to just be absolutely toxic as hell and make your enemies have I keep saying enemies, allies. If you want to make your allies have seizures, then I would run the brightest possible green, more than likely, really bright green or like a really vibrant red, and then go into co-op and just watch your teammates scream their heads off because they can't see anything. It's like when you run bright red on Hydroid and just spam as one, can't see shit. Very funny, and it will make for a great time if you're playing with your friends and then they just, you know, throw their controller out the window because they're sick of having seizures every half a second. Just thought I'd, you know, give you that little tidbit of information there because it's very funny. Now, Qorvex is way better than I was expecting, to be totally honest, because I hadn't played him yet, right? So I had Qorvex, I leveled him, and then I tested him a bit with some other builds, but then I ended up eating him because I wanted to put Chirenko on Hildren at the time, and then I waited quite a while to build him again. But I did a couple months ago, and I've had him with several different builds in the meantime, testing stuff, you know, lots of, I personally hate this word, it's just a nitpick, but theory crafting, I guess. And I just couldn't really settle on a build I liked. I mean, I liked the builds that I had, but none of them really felt as juicy as what I was looking for. Until this one. This one has like just the right amount of stuff for everything that I could need, so I'm quite satisfied with it. And here goes Mania absolutely getting pulverized. He's dead. So yeah, he handles acolytes with very little effort. Now, please, there we go. Oh, it was an Xmas. He was immune to stats effects. That's why his armor wasn't getting shot by the heat approx. The only complaint I have with this build would be, I wish the armor strip was a little bit stronger, but you have to sacrifice too much of other stuff. Though, if you do want to give up Breach Surge, I personally really like Breach Surge. Okay, I know I literally just cast it for the first time this freaking mission, but I really like Breach Surge here. If you do not feel like running Breach Surge, you could run an armor strip ability. The thing is, it has to be a passive one because you're always in your 4 all the time, so you can't just constantly exit it to armor strip every time a new wave of enemy shows up. So the most effective thing you would think would be Jade's helmet ability, because then everywhere you'll look at armor strips, except there's an issue with that, which is it's only where you're looking, and we have lots of chain reaction explosions all over the place, so there's going to be lots of enemies taking damage that just aren't armor stripped, so it's not consistent enough, or it's not a wide enough spread of armor strip to be worth using with this specific kind of setup, I don't think. If you have any better ideas, let me know in the comments. I'm sure there are lots of big PP Qorvex mains out there that have good information they can give. So if you are one of a said big PP Qorvex players, then by all means do enlighten us. I would love for more information on this guy. He's one of the most entertaining Warframes to play in the game, in my opinion. Just the dopamine that goes off when you see chain reactions everywhere is very satisfying. And the sounds of his abilities, I probably have not tuned the sound to be right at all. Plus, I'm probably going to have like random music in the background, so you probably won't be able to hear his abilities very well. But if you play him, the staticky sounds when you cast an ability and stuff, oh man, very orgasmic to the ears. Okay, it's an eargasm when you use his abilities, and it fits his whole reactor theme. The thought of being a walking nuclear reactor, it's pretty awesome. He's one of the coolest ideas of frames out there. Now, something I want to briefly talk about would be, I know that's a couple months ago now, because actually when I really started getting into building Qorvex, one of the reasons was a video made by the YouTuber Nova Umbra, okay? It was titled Worst Frame in the Game, I think, or something like that. It's been a while. Worst Warframe, something like that. Okay. I think that's a lot of people that watched that video, a lot of people were mad about that video, okay? They were mad that he was saying he's the worst Warframe in the game. And I do not think Qorvex is the worst Warframe in the game by a long shot. I would if we have the augments in accounts, I would put him in A tier, assuming you haven't built. I don't think he's very strong for like no investment kind of stuff. Like low investment, there's better frames. But when you have a decent level investment, he's actually pretty strong. Not quite like S tier, but you know, I'd say like a mid-level A tier. Okay, he's a pretty solid frame and very fun to play. But most of the people missed the points he was trying to make in the video. Almost everything that Nova said in the video I agreed with. And I think the main issue was his thumbnail. I mean, you know, saying Qorvex is the worst Warframe in the game in the thumbnail is going to get people riled up. And then for the video to be like 40 plus minutes long, a lot of people aren't going to want to have to sit through and listen to all of that. Now, Qorvex, I fully agree that he is the worst Warframe in the game in the regards to how Nova was talking about him, okay? Or at least from what I gleaned from watching the video. I watched the whole video twice over, though that was a couple months ago. And the main issues with him that Nova Umbral brings up are not necessarily his viability, okay? It's not about his damage. It's not about his survivability. It's not about his enjoyment, okay? It's not about his how good his theme in practice is, right? Because they did a really good job of making him feel like a walking nuclear reactor. I think all of those things are perfectly fine, and I'd say probably Nova also thinks that, okay? The main issues that he brought up in the video with Qorvex are all valid because they have to do with how he was implemented, okay? Qorvex was implemented very, very poorly. He has so many issues, be it with his passive honestly being a little weird, that's punched through to your weapons, and he's a caster frame. His first ability, casting speed, not working on him properly. His second ability, casting speed, not working on him properly. His second ability being janky with the grouping. It doesn't like to grab enemies very well. Sometimes it breaks going up and down stuff. Range not making it wider. The first ability not having very much range on itself either. His 3 only giving status immunity when it could give more than that, compared to like Mesmer Skin on Revenant. I know we shouldn't compare the two, but you know, just as an example, Mesmer Skin is complete immunity, including statuses. So this is just a downgrade, okay? It's just status immunity when it could give us something more like extra armor, extra DR, extra health regen, anything, okay? And his 4th ability, it could use a little more, I don't know, right? It needs a little bit more base damage, I think, so that it's not so reliant on huge groups of enemies. If you have like 2 tanky enemies, or hell, 3 even, okay? 3, 4 enemies that are really tanky, it's going to do jack shit. It's really bad when there isn't a large group of enemies. It is not a high damage ability in those scenarios. And you can say, well, yeah, he's not meant for that. He's meant for groups of enemies, but sometimes enemy spawns are weird and teammates can do stuff and kill shit. And then you don't really have a situation where you're making use of your frame that you're playing. And all of a sudden he becomes worthless because he doesn't contribute anything else for the most parts other than being a caster frame and killing stuff, okay? So I think Qorvex struggles a lot in all of those regards. He really needs help in his consistency and fixing his clunkiness. I don't think it would be that hard to fix. I don't think he needs a full rework, but I do think that he needs a quick look over and to, you know, patch him up here and there. But overall, very solid frame. I like him. Very fun. Definitely try getting him. He's really, really easy to get. Really easy to get, dude. Just farm a couple bounties in the laboratories, right? Albrecht's laboratories. Bam, you guys blueprints, craft him. There you go. He's one of the easiest frames to craft in the game. And he's very much worth having on your account. So give him a try. That's it for the Qorvex video, I guess. Finally got this out. We're gonna assume I actually get it out this time. This is what, like the 2nd or 3rd time I think I record this. I recorded a couple times before, and you know, stuff happened, changed the augments, decided I didn't like the build, yada yada yada. I think I mentioned at the start of the video. You get the point. If you have any ideas for other stuff you want me to try out since the tech rod update, let me know. I do have, you know, if I do something, it's not going to be like immediate because I don't have a lot of resources or time right now to make lots of builds like I had done before. You know, daily uploads are not really going to be a thing, at least for the foreseeable future, but we'll be trying to do more stuff. Okay, so that's a big whoa. Leave a like and subscribe, I guess. Stuff. That's probably something I should say in the middle of the video, or at least if I listen to YouTube. But hey, YouTube be damned, they can lick my ass. Yeah, that's it. Adios.